This afternoon we have the distinct privilege and honor of being joined by a dear friend whose scholarship and academic leadership proclaim the power of all schools, including, perhaps in a special way, Catholic schools, to contribute to the common good of our country and our families. Dr. Anthony Bryk, Tony, currently serves as the president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, an internationally prominent research center with a primary mission to do and perform all things necessary to encourage, uphold, and dignify the profession of the teacher. Tony's many achievements reflect his ardent personal commitment to the Carnegie Foundation's mission. He himself has served as a gifted teacher and a prodigious scholar in some of our nation's most prestigious institutions of higher learning. He's held the Spencer Chair in Organizational Studies in the School of Education and the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. He's served as the Marshall Field IV Professor of Urban Education at the University of Chicago. This brilliant and caring scholar is also an innovative leader and a bold reformer. Among his many accomplishments, Tony established the Center for Urban School Improvement in Chicago, which seeks solutions to inner-city schools' pressing needs so that all children, particularly those most in need in urban America, may receive an excellent education. We here in ACE and at Notre Dame have long benefited from Tony's contributions to the field of Catholic education. He's served as a trusted advisor to us over the years, stretching back to the beginnings of the Institute for Educational Initiatives over a decade ago and the Master of Education program in 1998. Tony was a major contributor to our Notre Dame Task Force on Catholic Education in 2006, and his seminal 1993 study, Catholic Schools and the Common Good, remains a classic in sociology of education and a staple in the curricula of the degree programs whose graduates we celebrate today. Tony shares our conviction that Catholic colleges and universities have a particularly important responsibility to sustain and renew Catholic schools, these national treasures dedicated to the common good. ACE responds to the call to strengthen Catholic schools as vibrant communities that educate the whole person and work for justice. Tony inspires us to reinvigorate a field of Catholic education, to deepen Notre Dame's commitment to this robust and vitally important field of study so that we may best serve our nation's children through our service and our research. So, my dear friends, please join me in welcoming back to Notre Dame a true model of scholarship, character, and tireless leadership for the common good, Dr. Tony Bryk.
Thank you. I am truly honored to be here today to offer this commencement address. I'm thinking when Father Scully invited me to give this address that he probably forgotten that I actually hold an undergraduate degree from that other Catholic university, Boston College. Yes, it's true. However, then I thought that it might be the case that given the nature of your program's strong focus on social justice, that perhaps he had decided to extend out the handshake of peace to Boston College as well. In the spirit of total transparency, and after all, we do live in this age of public accountability, I actually have one more troublesome sin to confess. I was here in your stadium on that fateful fall afternoon, November 20th, 1993, when Boston College upset the #1 ranked Notre Dame football team. For many BC alums, this was a conversion experience. Think about Paul on the road to Emos. That's what it felt like. for the first time we came to believe that God might actually live in Boston rather than just in South Bend. Well, the football wars have been long, and I'm afraid the tide may be turning, and all may soon be right in the world again, as it appears God may be returning to his or her proper home here in South Bend. But I'm not here today to really talk about football. I'm here, in fact, to congratulate you for completing a step in the journey of a valued vocation, those who educate. And for that matter, for joining a very special community within this profession, a community of Catholic educators. Now, I know a bit about Catholic education. I'm a product of 16 years of Catholic schooling. And I spent over a decade of my academic life studying and writing about Catholic schools. These are institutions with an extraordinary history of extending opportunity to the poor, the immigrant, and the oppressed. They enliven an extraordinary vision, the education of whole persons, both heart and mind. You've committed through your participation in the ACE programs to advancing this important mission. For many young people now enrolled in Catholic schools, you are their hope for the future. Through you, they too will have the opportunity to see the good and to go live it as well. You're also the hope for the institutions in which you work. Even as research over the last 2 decades has documented the extraordinary contributions of Catholic schools toward advancing the common good, these institutions have become increasingly fragile and their futures less certain. You begin now as novices in your respective professional roles, but before long, you will come to lead the institutions you now join. These schools need you now more than ever before. Their continued existence, their vitality, and spirit is in your hands. Now, research tells us that students in Catholic schools achieve at relatively high levels, and that these outcomes occur more equitably with regard to student background, race, and social class than is the case in public schools. We also know that Catholic schools sustain very high levels of commitment among their faculty and very high levels of engagement among their students. At a time when quality education matters more than ever before, these are institutions that have labored hard for a very long time toward these important educational goals. But at its core, Catholic education aspires to something even greater. It is an education of value. These are institutions that add a depth to schooling that is otherwise dominated today by a rhetoric of test scores and performance standards. To educate as Jesus did is to advance peace and social justice within an ecumenical and multicultural world. This is the signature of Catholic education. Teachers and administrators in Catholic schools take seriously an educational philosophy that personal formation occurs best in the dynamic interplay of knowledge, individual reflection, and social action. At base here is a belief that through education, each student will develop the critical consciousness that enables human reason to arrive at ethical truth and that arouses a personal passion to go advance these truths. Over the last decade, my institution, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, has conducted an extensive program of inquiry on preparations for the profession. At the foundation, we have studied preparation in law, engineering, medicine, nursing, and for the ministry. We learned that graduating from a program of professional education, as you are today, marks a critical event in joining a professional community. The apprenticeship in which you have been engaged, as is the case in every profession, has three distinct dimensions: the cognitive, the clinical, and the formative. Like other professional preparation programs, ACE has trained you well in the foundations of our field, such as child psychology, learning theory, instructional design. It has equipped you with specialized knowledge to teach a particular subject and how best to educate diverse groups of students. This cognitive apprenticeship was nurtured through your summer classes here at Notre Dame. In tandem with this, you undertook your clinical apprenticeship as a novice teacher or leader in a Catholic school. Both of these, the cognitive and the clinical apprenticeship, are central to learning to teach and to learning to lead. But it's this third dimension of professional preparation, the formation of your identity as a Catholic educator, that distinguishes the ACE participants. It is here where you are challenged to integrate the values of your religious tradition with the professional knowledge and skill that you've begun to acquire. Developing the sense of how to be in the world as an educator with your students is the hallmark of this very special program. It is not surprising, then, that we describe your work as a vocation and call what you do a form of ministry. This idea of formation is central to the special role that you take on in the lives of your students. This concept of formation reflects a recognition that teaching and learning are about more than transferring facts or even developing cognitive skills. Learning in this formative sense is a process where the student becomes a kind of thinking, feeling, and acting human being. This is your charge. Your role as educator involves genuine social engagement with your students. You seek it in your classrooms and schools to shape an educational environment that aims to both advance student intellect while also nurturing their voice of conscience, a voice that I know each of you hear and seek to respond to day in and day out, even as we may recognize our shortcomings, and there are certainly bad days that come as an educator. This voice of conscience continues to inspire us toward achieving what often seems just beyond our reach. A former colleague of mine at the University of Chicago, Martin Marty, has written extensively on the role of religious understandings in why and how we educate. Marty urges us to cultivate in ourselves and in our students a sense of wonder. He tells us, neglect or shun the address to wonder, and you frustrate education and endanger society, and in our crowded world, endanger life itself. Enhance the address to wonder, and the promise of education begins to find fulfillment. That some nations and international communities and organizations have invented social patterns which help adults transcend mere self-centeredness and become citizens, volunteers, altruists, and visionaries. This is a wonder. We educate to stimulate inventions like these, to help provide a repository of options from the past and a repertory of alternatives and tools for the present. Your students will be responsible for the world in which they and their children live. They will be called upon to become stewards of the environment, arbiters of justice and fairness, and citizens who engage in our democratic polity to improve their local communities and our larger society. And they will live in a time when change is constant, where we can't even imagine today the questions, no less the possible alternatives they will have to confront. As you go into your classrooms and schools, you will not only be leading your students to develop a deep understanding of the subject matter that we expect them to learn, but you will also be mirroring examples of scholarship, citizenship, and community involvement. Yes, you will be living this sense of wonder that ultimately will lead us toward a better society and indeed a better world. I know that you take on this mantle with both seriousness and fervor. I congratulate you on the hard work that has gotten you to this day, and I applaud your willingness to take on the challenges ahead. The work will rarely be easy. The financial remuneration is surely very modest, and at times the vision of the good may seem off in the distance. But you will persist because in your heart you know why you're here. I close this afternoon with an inspiration, one that's been personally important to me, from John F. Kennedy's inaugural address that certainly befits the vocation on which you now embark. As JFK implored us, with a good conscience, your only true reward, let us go forth to lead the land we love, knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. You do God's work, and I thank each of you for that, and may God bless you all.